Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another episode of Marco Bella. The trouble is, today we've only got Marco. So where on earth is Bella? Well, to answer the question, she's got COVID.
Oh, no.
But don't be disappointed yet. Because she's so committed, she's actually agreed to do this behind all the PPE. So I'm just going to give her a call and bring her onto the show. Here we go. Bethel!
Hi, everyone. I'm Bella. And together with Marco Bella, my voice sounds so funny.
You sound like...
Rabbit season!
Yeah, I mean, you sound really well, by the way.
I look really well, don't I?
You do look really well. For somebody who's got COVID, where you've actually done your hair, you've dressed up, you're looking at
I tried my best, guys. I don't know how long I'll cope on this video, but it is our posting day, and we weren't gonna miss it for COVID.
And I think this brings us on to a really interesting topic about believing your partner when they're actually sick. And I think Bethel's got a really interesting story about that.
No, so we're supposed to be talking about finances this week, guys. But actually, in this state, I don't have the energy to talk about finances. So we thought we'd do a really funny one about how Marc responds to me when I'm ill. Right. Marc, I think you tell it better with me interjecting, actually.
So this was probably in the first 6 months of us getting married. And
yeah,
we were driving between Canterbury and someplace, Ramsgate, I think it was. So just to give context, we were in the middle of nowhere. It was a country road and we were just in the middle of nowhere.
And it was 1 a.m.
And it was about 1 a.m. in the morning.
And it was winter.
It was winter, it was cold.
It snowed, actually.
It just snowed. And so
we were in a car with no heating. Because those are the
in a car without any heating. And in case you've got any questions why the car didn't have any heating, I mean, the car...
We just talked about them in the debt part when we had no money, right? Those were the days when we had no money.
Yeah. So the car literally had no heating. And so we driving in the middle of nowhere, and then the car decides to just give up the ghost.
It didn't really give up the ghost quietly, did it? It started banging.
No, it sounded like there was somebody playing drums in the bonnet. Or in the hood of the car, I think that's what you call it, in the hood.
Really
it started off like, just a normal drum, and then before you know it, it got really loud, and it was like a tap, 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 and then the car stopped working. And obviously, because I'm no mechanic, I like to keep my hands clean and play music. I had no clue what was going on, but it turned out that the car had no oil, and so it broke, and that was the end of it. And so here we are, stuck in the middle of nowhere, between 1 and I think it's probably about 1 in the morning by then, or 1:30, really cold evening. And so we stop. And then I think we only had one mobile at the time. And so we rang.
At the time we had one mobile and we didn't even have credit, because those are the poor days, guys. Those are the poor days. We didn't have breakdown cover. We didn't have credit.
Yep.
We only had, if you remember back in the days of 02, what was that special thing that you had? It was like 5 numbers where you had free calls to them or something like that.
Yeah, I know.
And it was like, call my friends or call my mates or something like that. And we had my mom and dad obviously on those numbers. And we were like, we're going to have to call them. We can't even call a taxi because we don't have free call. We can't call. Mm-hmm. So literally we had to wake my parents up at 1:30 in the morning and be like, we don't even know where we are. We had to walk around to find a street address, and
I mean, what was interesting about that? So here we are, stuck in the middle of nowhere. We were able to call Bethel's dad and ask him to ring a taxi for us because we didn't have any credit. So he was going to ring the taxi that was going to take us home. So that was sorted. But then the wait was probably about 40 minutes to an hour,
a really long time. I remember us being in that situation for at least nearly 2 hours. We were in the
about 2 hours. Yeah.
Nearly 2 hours. Yeah.
So Beth and I are huddled together. It's really cold. So we
huddled together.
Well,
what are you telling fibs for?
That's how I remember it. How was it? What was it?
I was sat in the passenger seat all by myself, and you were like trying to fix the car and trying to look for solutions, and then like
look for solutions. That's funny because I had no clue what was going on.
And then you came back in the car at some point, and we were just waiting in the cold.
But I think the best part of the story for me, so, you know, the taxi finally arrived probably after about 2 hours or so. We got in a taxi, we drove home. It was probably, I don't know, maybe a 20-minute journey or something like that. We got home, and now, so you can imagine this is probably about 4 a.m. in the morning. And we step out the car, and I open the front door. I take the, you know, some of the bags that we had, I put them into the house. And I turn and I pay the taxi guy, or you know, I think we paid.
No, we didn't have to pay him because
we didn't have to pay him, but we just thanked him, you know, for bringing us home. And so I turn, and Bethel's walking through the front door, and to my surprise, Bethel takes 1, 2, 3 steps, and then she falls to the ground, to the floor. I'm like, what on earth is she doing? It's like 4 a.m. I mean, it's not time for games. I mean, I nothing within me said to me that she was probably unwell.
Nothing within him thought, my wife has just collapsed on the floor. Let me check if she's okay. Like nothing, no part of him. So what Marc does is he carefully.
So I picked up the bags.
I picked
up the bags and I just stepped over her. Like, I mean, I don't know what you're doing, but this is not the time to be playing those games. And so I carried on. Yeah.
He literally picks up the bags and steps over me and walks into the kitchen. So the house is like the living room first, then they had the dining room and then the kitchen. So it was like a good 20 meters from where I was.
But then I turned back, Bethel. I turned back to look. And guess what Bethel's doing? If any of you ever watched The Saving Private Ryan, right, Bethel's on the floor and she's like, and I'm thinking, what?
That so ridiculous.
What are you doing?
I was in agony. So instead of him being like, are you okay, honey? Like, what's going on? He thinks I'm basically joking because Marc's famous line is, I have a master's in drama.
Oh, which you do, by the way.
But
she does have a master's in drama.
It had nothing to do with acting. I was legit in serious pain. And he didn't even bother to ask me at all. Like, he was just like, okay.
I mean, bearing in mind, this is 4:30 in the morning. Like, all your energy just walked, and here's somebody just, you know, acting out a scene. I was like, sorry,
believe it
I
or
just haven't got the energy for it.
Believe it or not, I had to literally drag myself all the way upstairs to get into bed. At no point did Marc click, like, oh, she's actually being serious. And then I was like, Ben had to be like, can you give me some ibuprofen and a hot water bottle, please? And he was like, okay. And he
like, a really interesting point on that, Bethel, is, you know, we were talking the last time about things that you want to talk about before you get married, right? And at no point had Bethel said to me, I've got this problem.
Yeah, so basically,
so I had no clue. So here's Bethel just
acting
out a scene in front of me, and I'm like, I appreciate.
To be fair, it hadn't happened to me in such a long time that I don't know, it just wasn't at the forefront of my mind. But since I was a little kid, because I got injured on my knee when I was a little kid. And it basically, if I'm ever in the cold for too long, not now anymore, I'm healed, but at the time, if I was ever in like the cold for a very long time, what would happen is that my knee and like my joints would seize up. And so that's what happened. So when I got home, I didn't throw myself on the floor like Marc says. Like my joints literally seized up. And I was like, I collapsed on the floor and he was like, what are you doing?
I mean, bearing in mind, Bethel, we dated for what was it, 2 years?
No, we dated for like 1 year before we got married, but obviously we knew each other for a long time. But
exactly. And in all our years of hanging out, chilling out, and doing, you know, all sorts of stuff, activities and stuff, at no point had your knee seized up, and so this was completely new to
But at no point had we been stuck in a freezing cold car in the snow for 2 hours.
That's a good point.
So I'd never been in a situation where that would happen. Anyway, long story short, Marc was like, I don't believe you, because like, how can you were fine in the car. And what I was trying to explain to him was, my leg was in pain in the car, but I was stuck in a situation. For me, I don't know about other women, but for me, I'm not about to start moaning about pain, like when I know I've got a long time to go. Like,
make the situation worse. Yeah, no, granted.
I'm just going to keep quiet and I'm going to just breathe through it. Even in my labor was 29 hours. I did not scream once.
No.
And they kept saying, oh, it's your first baby. When you're
Thanks to Bethel.
No, seriously, they were like, you'll scream. I was like, I'm not the screaming type. I know myself. So that's why Marc was like, if you're in that much pain, surely you would have alerted me in some way. So it was a learning curve for me because obviously I hadn't told him anything and I hadn't like said to him, oh, my legs hurting me. So he didn't have any clue about what was going on.
Exactly.
But that was really, really funny. The next one that happened though, after that, is that we were at church, one day, we were at church on Friday, and like the message was amazing.
Oh, this is Bethel in church. Glory! Hallelujah! Amen, brother!
Yeah, I was like in the spirit, when you're in the spirit.
Really charged.
Like a different dimension, you're in your spirit and you're not thinking about your body.
Yeah.
So I was just like on a high. But then when I got in the car, I was feeling like this cold, like a cold, like sort of thing. My brother-in-law is not one of the most
shade. Here we go, shade.
Like I love him to bits, but he's not very like sensitive in that sense. So he picked up that I wasn't feeling okay. So
is that because he was sat next to you? Because he just happened to be sitting next to you, didn't he?
It was a small car, Marc.
It was a van.
It wasn't the van. No, we weren't in the van. It was in a normal car. It was in Mum and Dad's car.
Oh, it was a 7-seater. That's why, because I'm thinking you were somehow at the back. 7-seater. That's why.
He was like, oh, are you okay? And I was like, oh, I'm not feeling that great. But Marc, my own husband, didn't even notice that I wasn't feeling that great. So then when we got home, this is probably like year 2 of our marriage. We lived in another house. It wasn't like terrible or anything like that, but the heating was really bad. It wasn't like a well-insulated house. So it was really cold in the house. So when we got in the house, I was just like, Marc, I'm feeling really, really cold. Like I'm freezing. Like when you've got a fever, you're freezing and you're shaking. And then he's just like, again, he did the same thing.
It was really interesting because weren't it like spasms you were having? It was literally like...
Yeah, I was literally like that. And he's looking at me like, is this girl tripping? Like, I swear we were in church and she was just saying amen. And I was just like, Marc, like, I'm really cold. And he was like, okay, fine. Marc literally grabs like a folded duvet, doesn't even bother. Like, he just throws it on me. Like, he didn't even bother to be like, oh, let me nicely tuck my wife in. No, he just throws the duvet on me. And he literally leaves me. I was like, what?
At that point, I'd had about 2 years of drama. So I was like, I'm done with the standing ovations.
Like,
just move on and have change scene, please.
I thought, is he actually crazy? Like, he doesn't even check if his wife's all right. And then after that, I basically had a fever the whole night. Marc slept next to me the whole night and I had a fever the whole night. At no point did he go, are you okay? He was fast asleep, snoring.
Wait, was this the, this wasn't the king size bed?
One.
Is that the king size bed?
No, it wasn't the king size bed. No.
Or sleeper king size?
It wasn't. It was a normal double. And then he goes, so then at like 6 a.m, I'm like, no, I can't take this anymore. I'm dying. Like, I literally need some help. So I wake up and I'm like, Marc, like, can you pray for me, please? I can't do this. And he's like, okay. So like, I'm going to demonstrate with my pillow, right?
I know, if only I was right next to you. The dramatic effect, you'd actually see.
So Marc grabs my head right under his arm, exactly like this, right? And he goes like this in the bed, like, dear God, please help me. I'm like, what? What? You're praying for me? He's like,
hey, the scripture says, come unto me, all you that are heavy laden. I was heavy laden in my heart.
Let me finish what I'm saying.
Yeah, go on.
He's like, please help me, because sometimes I just don't believe Bethel. But Lord, if she is sick, please heal her. I was like,
okay, let's.
My dad.
Wait.
Call my dad. I don't believe in your prayers. Call my dad.
Wait, let's analyze the prayer. So first I said, Lord, please help me.
You need help for sure.
Yeah, I needed help. And I needed help. And I think that was a perfect moment for me to actually ask for that help.
Say that out loud. You should have said it in your head or something. I was like,
Lord help me. Sometimes, and I think this is interesting for the sake of the conversation, right? Because it's okay to be honest and transparent with where you are. So here I was saying to Bethel, do you know what? It's true. Sometimes I just don't believe you because you've done this whole acting thing so well for so long that I just don't know what's true.
Like I'm some phony wife. Like I get sick all the time and I make it up.
Hey, we know that story, The Boy That Cried Wolf. I think that's a good resource. That's a good resource.
How dare you?
Wolf, and then the real wolf shows up, and it's like
no. So the lesson that we learned was communication, because clearly I wasn't communicating to Marc. So what was happening is that, like, because I've got such a high threshold for pain, I wouldn't tell him like on the first onset of pain because no point.
Absolutely, yeah.
Whatever, yeah. I'm fine. Yeah. I'll cope. Like even now with COVID, like oh my gosh, it's been horrendous. I don't even know why I'm filming this video right now, but I've got such a high threshold for pain, so I'm just like, I'll leave it and leave it and leave it until it's like the last minute when I can't cope. When now I'm just at that point where I cannot do this, and I need help.
And Beth, I'll just interject there because this is exactly what happened with the situation. She was in church. She was shouting, she was jumping, she was, celebrating and all of that. And then, half an hour later, she says, I have a migraine. Sorry.
No, it didn't say I had a migraine. It said my throat was sore.
And I was just using it as an example, like my throat is sore or something. I can't remember what it said.
Yeah.
But, the contrast. And for me, I just couldn't understand, like, what? How does that happen?
Marc doesn't see things like that. So he literally needs to be told, like.
You mentioned a good point, Bethel, about, informing me, so building up the case as it escalates. So start from the moment you start to feel some.
I literally had to, like, from now, like, in order to like get him to a point where he'd believe me, I'd literally have to tell him like the smallest thing, like, oh, I feel a little bit of a twinge in my head.
Yeah, exactly.
And then maybe if it was an hour later, if it's getting worse, it's like, oh, it's getting a little bit worse. And then like I'd literally have to do that until he started to believe me more and more. Absolutely. So the more I communicate with him, the more that he would believe what I was saying. So now it's actually, now he does believe me. Apart from the last time when I was like having serious round ligament cramps and I was like, and I was screaming.
Oh, Bethel, don't start with that. Bethel does
you didn't even come.
No, that's funny. Like, so Bethel makes.
Care about your unborn child.
No, but this is what happens. Bethel makes these sounds in the house that don't communicate anything. So she could go, and I'm like downstairs. I'm like, what's that supposed to mean? And then she could go,
No, I don't sound like that.
Or
I'm like,
I don't know what that means. But if you say to me, oh, Marc, I think I need help, or help. Help. And then she, I'll come over when she makes those sounds. I'll come over and she'll be like, "Did you not hear me?" I'm like,
"No, you don't."
I heard you, but I don't know what that means.
You let me get on.
No, I see when I do come up.
By the time I can talk again, then you come over and it's too late. And I'm like, you already missed it. I've literally had to just work that out by myself.
Yeah.
But again, we did communicate, and I said, "Listen, I'm pregnant. I'm getting these weird cramps. Like, I don't know when they come on. They just come on. So if you hear me scream or do anything, or you hear a weird noise, just come and check on me because I don't know." The other day you did, I think my bottle fell or something like that. And you were like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Oh."
Now I ask. Before I just like, I don't know what that means. Just better some sounds. Like, like, what? What does that mean? So I think it's a really good point about, being clear with your communication. And I think also the other thing that we realized is because of the way my mum was, her tolerance towards pain and how she addressed us when we were hurt or wounded or injured or anything like that. So my mum was, tough love because obviously, she had boys, a girl and two boys after that. And so she tended to, just come on, pick yourself up. You're all right.
Yeah.
You go. And
it's such a good point. That's such a good point.
In contrast to that, when we were, badly wounded, she would come over and, really sit you down and nurse you and treat you well. But But I think that kind of spilled over. So when I'm with
definitely
Bethel,
spills over to you. You're like tough love. And my mom is the complete opposite. My mom's like,
oh
the
my
best
goodness,
when
yeah,
you're ill.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
She makes you soup. She still does even now.
I know. She's made me some soup now, and it's like, it's amazing. She makes you soup. She gives you massages. She comes and checks on you like every 10 minutes.
She's checking
brings
on
your
you.
medication, brings your drinks, brings your fruits. So I'm used to that. And like, I'm used to her just instinctively knowing what to do and how to do it.
Yeah.
And so obviously with Marc, I'm like, ugh. But yeah, I do that for you though.
No, you do, absolutely, like, you do. You know, Bethel really, kind of sits by your side and just makes sure you're okay. I was going to say a resource that I found, which has really helped me to kind of meet Bethel's needs, or at least understand Bethel's situation, has been this book. It's a pocket-sized joke book, and in there are acting jokes. I'll read one of them. And this actually paints, or at least portrays, Bethel in the best of way. It says, "The secret of acting is sincerity. If you can fake that, you've got it made." So now that I'm actually a believer, you know, that she's not acting anymore, I think I believe her.
Now you're a believer.
I am a believer now. Yes.
Anyway, guys, we love you so much, and we love all the comments that you guys have been giving us. Thank you so much. That's why we filmed this video. I am fine, praise God. Yesterday was a terrible day, but you know, my son Micah is amazing. He comes to me and I was like, Micah, don't come close to mommy.
That was so sweet.
I don't want you to get sick. And he was like, Mommy, you need to say, I rebuke you, Satan. And you need to say, by his stripes I'm healed.
Yeah.
And you need to watch more Superbook. If you don't know, Superbook is the Bible stories for kids. We'll send a link, put a link in the description. You need to watch more Superbook.
Yeah.
Because when you watch Superbook, it will teach you. He will teach you just that when you're sick, you should say his word. And I was like, wow, this child is ministering to me.
Absolutely. And he's only 4.
And he's only 4. And I literally took him exactly what he said. I said, you know what, Micah, you're right. I said, amen to that. And the whole day yesterday, I just played tapes and I just listened to messages and I just played preaching. My dad prayed for me. I got Micah to pray for me as well. And I literally just kept saying and repeating those, even though I was having fevers and everything. I was like, no, I'm not accepting this. You know.
And I know this is a conversation for a different day, but you know, one of the things I really admire Micah said, what I really appreciate is the fact that he's able to express how he feels. And so he comes over to his mummy, you know, and he stood about 3 meters away from her, and he says, "Mummy, I'm really sad." And she says, "Why?"
I'm really worried. I'm really
why are you sad, Micah? And he said, "Because I can't hug you."
Yeah.
And that was it. Because I can't hug you. But the fact that he's able to actually articulate that and express that, you know, as parents,
he's really bad about the no hugs. Like that's really killing him right now. Like, oh, Mummy, I want to hug you. He's like, we used to have group hugs because we do family group hugs. And he's like, we used to have group hugs, but we can't for 4 days.
Family hug, group hug.
Like, okay, Mike, I've only got 4 more days. It's going to be fine.
Well, Bethel, we want you to rest because we want you to get better. And so we're going to have to tell everybody goodbye.
Yeah.
But thank you for your time and thank you for coming over to actually have this conversation with us. At least now we know you're not faking it.
The COVID test said so.
The COVID test actually said so. So to everybody else, hope you like and subscribe. Yeah.
And stay safe. I know the UK government has said stop testing and all this jazz, but to be honest with you, COVID is still very real. Stay safe. Yeah. See you.
Until next time.